All right. Good evening, everybody. It is January 30th, 2022. You're now watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. So, welcome back to our Sunday night program. I'm the new point man in politics, and I'm so happy to be with you tonight with our two special guests. Our first guest is Mr. Todd Caliguire. Todd Caliguire has been a prominent name in Bergen County for quite some time. He was a former Bergen County freeholder in the 1990s. He served 2 terms. He ran for county executive in 2006. He fell short in that attempt, but he is back at it. And this year, he is running again for county executive as a Republican. And we're very happy to have Todd on our show tonight for the first time. Our second guest hails from very far away, from our neighboring Rhode Island. Okay, he is running for Congress in Rhode Island. His name is Robert Lancia. He is a former chaplain in the U.S. Navy. He served in the Rhode Island House of Representatives for 2 terms, starting from 2015, and he's going to be on our show tonight to talk to us about his campaign and what he wants to do for the great state of Rhode Island. All right, so let's bring up Todd Caliguire.
Ron, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, Todd, how are you?
Good, thanks.
All right, Todd. So you have been a staple in Bergen County for quite some time now, right? Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, about your background, and what you hope to bring to the office of Bergen County Executive?
Well, I've lived my entire life in Bergen County. Grew up here, went to school, public school in Tenafly, attended college in New Jersey at Princeton, and then went on and got a master's degree in business and also a law degree. And I served Tom Kean when he was governor as an assistant legal counsel, and then as counsel to the governor. I was a senior policy advisor to Governor Kean. Then left the governor's office, came back up to northern New Jersey and was involved in the private practice of law for a number of years, but also served in some other governmental positions. I was appointed to be a commissioner on the State Commission of Investigation, which is an agency that's charged with investigating organized crime and public corruption in New Jersey.
Okay.
I also spent about 8 years running the largest public water utility in the state. And I'm proud of the fact that during that entire 8-year period, we never had to raise rates, water rates at all.
Great.
In addition, I've also run some private businesses, so I've got a fairly diverse experience, both in the public sector and the private sector. As you pointed out, I served 2 terms as a Bergen County freeholder.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Caliguire, so you can you please tell us about your time in the in the governor's office, because you served for Tom Kean as a legal counsel, right? Would you like to speak more about that?
Well, sure. I had actually a few different roles. I was assistant legal counsel in the Office of the Governor's Counsel. And then the governor created a new role, which was a role with the authority of overseeing all of the various state commissions and independent authorities around the state. There are quite a large number of them. So I was the governor's point person in terms of overseeing all those independent agencies. And then the governor, in his second term, appointed me to the position of counselor to the governor, where I was a senior policy advisor. I advised the governor on a broad range of issues involving the state of New Jersey.
Okay, great. Now, Todd, so you ran for county executive back in 2006, right? You ran against Dennis McNerney, who was the incumbent there in 2006, and you came up short. What do you plan on doing differently during this run?
I plan on winning.
Okay.
It's always, listen, Ron, you know this, and you've been involved in Bergen County politics. New Jersey is a difficult state for Republicans. We just saw that last year, where Jack Ciattarelli, who's a fantastic candidate, just came up a little bit short in his race against Governor Murphy, at the same time that a Republican was winning in the other governor's race in the country, which was in Virginia. So we know we always face a tough uphill fight. There are 1 million more registered Democrats in New Jersey than registered Republicans. And in Bergen County, it's not that much different. There are over 100,000 more registered Democrats in Bergen County than there are Republicans. So as Republicans countywide, we always face a bit of an uphill battle. But I think that what you see happening in the country generally is because Democrats control every level of government. At the federal level, they control the Congress, they control the presidency. At the state level here in New Jersey, they control the governor's office, they control the legislature, both houses of the legislature. And in Bergen County, they control the county executive's office and the what was called the Freeholder Board, now the Board of County Commissioners. They have policies that are in lockstep at every level. And you see the results, the same results at every level. Higher taxes, higher levels of spending, and a higher cost of living, less freedom, more control over our lives. You see open borders and the effects of open borders, and it's felt everywhere in the country. We just learned the other day that the federal government is literally flying illegal aliens from the border areas throughout the interior of the country, including New York and New Jersey, in the middle of the night. So we're seeing the effects of that everywhere in the United States, including in New Jersey and including in Bergen County. Also, we see, of course, the impact of some of the policies they've been promoting, particularly in education. Critical race theory, for example, is an ideology that has been promoted around the country, and I think has a very detrimental effect on our youth. It's an ideology that pits kids against each other based on the color of their skin, instead of trying to promote a colorblind society, and at the same time, celebrating the common heritage we have and the freedoms and opportunities we have as Americans, it's what we should be doing in schools. So you see the same types of things happening at every level of government, the same policies being promoted by Democrats, and the same horrible impact on the residents and the citizens of our country.
Okay, so if elected as the executive here in Bergen County, would you issue like a countywide ban on a critical race theory and these types of policies?
Yeah, absolutely. As county executive, I would not allow any school under my jurisdiction to indoctrinate children with that theory. I think it promotes division. It promotes racism, which is really what it is. A CRT is just racism by another name. Right. And as I said before, we should be promoting a colorblind society where everyone has equal opportunity. Everybody, as Martin Luther King said, is evaluated based on the content of their character, not based on the color of their skin.
Okay. Yeah, we have a comment here from Mr. Barry Wilkes, who, by the way, is the president of the Glen Rock GOP. You need representation from both parties to avoid abuse and complacency. This is an oligarchy. Each side needs opposition at the table to act as a watchdog to protect all rights. Your thoughts on that comment, Todd?
Well, I think Barry is right. I think when you have both parties involved and represented, you have more transparency. You have the ability to criticize. You don't have everyone moving in lockstep in one direction. There's an opportunity for give and take. I think that's a positive thing, and you end up with better government as a result.
Okay, great comment, Barry. Thank you.
It's been said in history that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and the fact is that's what we're seeing at every level of government now. In Washington, where the Democrats control everything, in Trenton, where the Democrats control everything, and in Hackensack, where the Democrats control everything.
Okay. Now, Todd, what is your platform for executive? What do you plan on doing?
Well, I mentioned a few things. First of all, in terms of mandates, I'm absolutely opposed to non-scientific mandates, which deprive us of our freedom and in many respects are harmful. So let's take, for example, the fact that the governor has imposed a mask mandate on kids in school. There is absolutely no science behind this. In fact, medical data suggests, first of all, that children are not at great risk from the virus. In fact, they're at a greater risk from the flu than they are from COVID, number one. Number two, they're harmed by having to wear masks all day. It inhibits their communication with their teachers, and it's very uncomfortable. Frankly, the reason the governor imposed this mandate, I believe, is because he's it's subservient to the very powerful teachers union in New Jersey. And as county executive, I would not allow the county board of health, the county department of health rather, to enforce any of these non-science based mandates, particularly mandates that hurt our kids. In addition, when you talk about illegals, I think it's very important that we all do our part to protect our citizens. And the fact is, if there are illegal aliens in the county jail that are being held on criminal charges, I would require that they be turned over to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, hopefully for deportation. In addition to that, I think that we obviously want to shrink the size of county government. You know, it's becoming very difficult for people to survive in Bergen County because of the high cost of living, and particularly the very high property taxes here. The fact is, since the Democrats took control of county government, total control, they have increased spending by over 50%, and they've increased the county share of property taxes by over 20%. And too many of our residents just can't afford to be here anymore, particularly seniors. Seniors on a fixed income have a very difficult time. And I'm sure everybody listening knows somebody, a friend perhaps, or a relative who says, you know, as soon as my kids are out of the school system, I'm out of here. I'm moving. I can't afford to live here anymore. And maybe people who are listening feel that way themselves. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can reduce property taxes. And what it requires is reducing the size of government. And so I actually have a plan to reduce the size of county government in 4 steps. If you want, Ron, I can tell you what those 4 steps are.
Sure. I mean, we would love to know.
Well, first of all, what I would do is I'd benchmark all of the operations of our county government against the results of other counties of a similar size and income level. You know, we're the 31st most wealthy county in the country out of 3,143 counties. And I doubt very seriously whether our people are really getting their money's worth from county government. So I would assess, or benchmark rather, every service that county government provides, every operation of county government against counties of similar size and income. Secondly, I would freeze the size of county government, the county workforce, and I'd begin to reduce it through attrition. It can be smaller. Our goal should be to reduce the size of county government. Thirdly, I would assess every service provided by county government and look at ways that we can use the private sector and technology to better provide those services for our people, to do it in a more cost-effective and efficient way. Listen, we all know that technology plays a bigger and bigger role in our lives. Government has always lagged behind in providing services using the most up-to-date technologies. I would look at every service the county provides and find ways to do it more efficiently using technology and the private sector. And then fourth, I would fight very hard to get state government to take over some of the functions that we have to pay for as county property taxes, but we have no control over. Let me give you an example. The county prosecutor's office. That is a function that is totally under the control of the governor. The governor appoints the county prosecutor. The prosecutor's budget is something that the county board of commissioners has no control over, and it's a state function. County property taxpayers should not be paying for that. It should be paid for by state government. We send plenty of money to Trenton. It's about time we started to get a little bit more in return.
Okay, great. Thank you for that very detailed plan. So to reiterate what we just said, as the executive of Bergen County, you would promote a policy that would ban CRT. You would promote the banning of the mask mandate, right? These are pretty bold platforms, right? Why is it that not more Republicans are voicing these issues?
Well, I don't know. I don't know why they're not, because frankly, I think this is a platform that I think enjoys a lot of support, not just from Republicans. I think we're going to find that there are a lot of independents and even Democrats who support these ideas. And Even some of these Democrats are disgusted with the direction that government is going under the control of what is now the Democrat Party. I think we're going to find a tremendous amount of support for these policies, and I think that other Republicans are going to be encouraged when they see the support to join in and support them as well.
Okay, now let me ask a very rudimentary question, right? So you're running for the executive in Bergen County, and let's say you do have these policies where you ban CRT and mask mandates, right? On the county level, will these these orders, will they trump what the governor does?
Well, I think that obviously you can't overcome what the governor does legally,
Right.
but you can provide resistance. And I think that it's important to stand up and have your voice be heard. I think that's the first step in pushing back against these policies, because frankly, at this point, there's been very little opposition. And I think there needs to be leadership that is offered, particularly by Republicans, in pushing back against some of these policies.
Right. Okay, we have another comment here from Al Mastro Filippo, who actually ran for New Jersey State Assembly this past year.
Can you still see me, because I don't see you on the screen?
Oh, yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
All right. So we have a question here from Al Mastro Filippo. The governor is bought and sold by the NJEA. Well, that's not really a question; it's a comment.
Well, I said the same thing. I mean, he's totally beholden to the teachers union, which is extraordinarily powerful in New Jersey. And I think that explains to some degree some of these non-science-based policies, like a mask mandate in schools, which, as I said before, is not justified by the science, and it hurts kids. So how else do you explain why the governor's doing it, other than he's being pushed into it by this extraordinarily strong teachers union that doesn't apparently have the best interests of kids at heart?
Right. All right. Another comment here from Mr. Mastro Filippo. Well, actually, this time it's a question. How would you manage the problem of most of the employees that have been hired by the Democrat machine, since ultimately they would want to sabotage your term as executive?
Well, as I said, the first thing I would do is I would freeze the county workforce and begin to make it smaller through attrition. At least I think that when we did our examination and assessment, as I mentioned before, looking at every service that's provided and finding ways to use technology in the private sector to provide them more efficiently, that's going to open up all kinds of opportunities to make the workforce more responsive.
Right. We have another comment here from Mr. Wilkes. When Governor Murphy, when he suggests in so many words to leave the state if you can't afford it, those are not the words of a leader who is there to solve problems. This policy gives no hope to many of our children who want to live in the state they grew up in.
I agree with Barry. And as I mentioned before, I also think a lot about our seniors. They have family here. They have grandchildren here. They don't want to leave. But a lot of them are on fixed incomes, and they simply can't afford to stay because of the high cost of living in Bergen County and the very high tax rates. And they're being pushed out in some instances against their desires. And I think we need to make it easier for them to stay. That's what life is all about. You want to be able to stay with your family. You want to be able to enjoy your kids and your grandkids. You shouldn't be forced out because of the high cost of living here.
Right. Okay. What are your thoughts on this past race in 2021?
Well, I think that Jack Ciattarelli was a fantastic candidate. I think he worked extraordinarily hard. It's unfortunate he came up just a little short. And, it just shows us that, it's a tough climb in New Jersey. We recognize that. We're going to have to work just that much harder to get over the top. But, it was obviously disappointing for everybody. I'm sure it was disappointing for Jack because he was really just incredibly hardworking, and it's just unfortunate. I think he'd make a terrific governor. But as I said, New Jersey's a tough place for Republicans, and we just need to, recommit ourselves and work that much harder to get a victory.
All right. Now, as the executive of Bergen County, I know this is not really within your, purview, but how would you elect to maybe clean up the voting system, the voting registration rolls in Bergen County? I know that's under the county clerk's office, but as the executive, you do have some say in that too, right?
Yeah, the Board of Elections, obviously there's a structure within the county that supervises elections and the voter rolls. I will tell you just anecdotally, my father, who passed away 4 years ago, received a ballot a year or so ago in the mail. So there are obviously a lot of problems with the voter rolls. They need to be cleaned up. That's job number one. Number two, I think it's very important that we provide transparency and certainty in our voting and election process. Everybody in this country needs to have absolute confidence that their vote is being counted properly and that the results will be an accurate vote, an accurate result. And that's key to democracy. If people don't have faith in the system, you have a significant problem. So I think anything that we can do to add to the transparency of the system is very important. As county executive, you don't have direct control necessarily, but I would be a voice to encourage more transparency, to make sure everyone has confidence that the results are accurate.
All right, great. We have another comment here from Mr. Michael Kuntz, who actually ran for NJ State Senate in District 37 this past year against Democrat Gordon Johnson, who ultimately won. But he did a great job during this race because, in District 37 is a predominantly Democratic town. But Mr. Kuntz, he went out there and campaigned every single day, and him and his team did a really good job. But anyway, his comment is this: we have a failing DMV in the county, a traffic congestion. We have 7 to 14% poverty level in many towns, and Hackensack is 14%. How do you negotiate with the boards of ed on CRT, who might cover it with other names?
Well, I think the first thing is information, right? And I think to some degree you have to depend on parents. Parents need to be more and more involved in the curriculum. They need to understand what it is. They need to examine it. And, that's the first step, is gaining information. So we're going to really depend, I think, to some degree on parents to identify problems. And once they do identify problems, then we can become a voice for them and to help them to make sure that those types of horrible, divisive ideologies are not allowed to be used to indoctrinate kids.
Okay. Now, Todd, what do you say to people who might say, well, Todd Caliguire, he ran for county executive in 2006. He had a shot and he, lost. Why should we give Todd Caliguire a second chance at the nomination and running for this office?
Well, I think the answer to that is very simple. Running as a Republican in New Jersey, and particularly in Bergen County, is not easy. And a lot of people have tried and lost. Very, very excellent candidates. I think that I'm offering some very valuable ideas and policies that will help to make county government better, that will improve the lives of people in Bergen County. And I think that those ideas warrant giving me a chance to put them into effect. Many politicians have run for office before and lost, but you only lose ultimately when you give up. And as I said, there are many examples of people who've run and ultimately succeeded. There's a woman in Palisades Park who Stephanie Jang, who just this past year was elected to the town council after 7 consecutive attempts. And she never gave up. She kept trying, and now she's successful. And you know what? That's something to be commended. She never gave up. She believed in herself. She believed in her ideas, and she finally broke through and won.
Yeah, Stephanie Jang is an incredible person. She's also been on the show, and we congratulate her on her win. When she won, the Democrats there tried to challenge it. Right? She was successful, and she took her office earlier this month.
Yeah, and let me give you another example. Jack Ciattarelli has now lost 2 consecutive governor's races. And I don't think anybody is suggesting that he wouldn't be a terrific governor and shouldn't try again. There's nothing wrong with trying and falling short.
Yep.
The key is not giving up.
Yep. And for Jack Ciattarelli, maybe 3rd time's the charm, right?
Exactly.
Now, Todd, was there anything that you learned from your race in 2006? Like any lessons that you learned in that race, or any mistakes that you hope to maybe fix or change a little bit in this race?
Well, unfortunately, 2006 was a difficult experience. There was a very big schism in the Republican Party, a very, very, very divisive primary. And we came out of that primary with a very divided party with limited ability to raise money. And we were facing a Democrat Party that was run at that time by a man named Ferriero, whose name you may remember.
Yep.
He was the party
Joe Ferriero.
Joe Ferriero, who was notorious for raising huge amounts of money. And in that year, he raised millions of dollars and used it against me in the campaign when we were, kind of left with very little in the way of resources. So, I think the moral to that story is, try not to have a divided party, try to have a united party, using every resource at your command to try to maximize your opportunity for success. Hopefully we won't have that experience this year that we had in 2006.
Okay. We have a comment here from Karen Jensen. Thank you for this. Well, thank you, Karen, for watching and for being a great supporter. All right, Todd. So now let's move on to some, fun questions, right? What does Todd Caliguire do for fun?
Well, frankly, I love physical activities and sports. I love to play tennis and run. I'm an avid skier. Love to ski. So I would say the answer to that is my favorite activities are outdoor athletic activities.
Okay, great. All right, Todd, I want to thank you so much for coming on our show tonight. We wish you the best of luck in your campaign. I understand there's a primary process. There's a few candidates who've thrown their hat into the ring for this position, but you're certainly very, very qualified, and we wish you the best of luck. All right, Todd?
Thank you, Ron. Good to see you.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care.
All right. All right, great. So that was Todd Caliguire running for county executive in Bergen County. He was the GOP nominee in 2006, and he hopes to capture the nomination again this year and take on the incumbent Democrat, Jim Tedesco, who I believe is serving his third or a fourth term. But anyway, we wish Todd the best of luck, and we'll be seeing him on the campaign trail. My next guest hails from the great state of Rhode Island, a tiny little state, just a little bit smaller than Jersey, right? But just as important, Rhode Island has some of the best beaches in the world, right? It's a great state. I've been there many, many times. I have many, many friends there, and it's a state that's near and dear, right? So Mr. Robert Lancia is a retired chaplain in the U.S. Navy. He has served in that capacity for many, many years. Prior to that, after that, he served in the Rhode Island State House for 2 terms, starting from 2015. Currently, he is running for U.S. Congress in the 2nd Congressional District of Rhode Island, and we're so happy to have him on our show tonight. Chaplain Lancia, how are you?
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on our show. How is the weather right now in Rhode Island? Because up here in Jersey, we just had a ton of snow dumped on us these past 2 days, starting Friday night.
We did too. We had the blizzard of 2022 here in Rhode Island.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Lancia, or should I call you Chaplain Lancia?
You know what? Bob is fine.
Okay. All right, Bob. So why don't you tell us about yourself, your background, and why you want to become the next congressman from Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I started out as an elementary school teacher. Went to seminary at 32, and each summer, because of separation of church and state, they couldn't give you a scholarship like they would doctors and lawyers in the Navy, but they would let us each summer do OJT, on the job training. So each summer I'd go somewhere in the country to do OJT during the summer to help finance my education. And went everywhere from the Marine Recruit Training Depot in San Diego to the Navy Recruit Training Depot in Great Lakes, also down to Kings Bay, Georgia with the nuclear subs, Mayport, Florida with the Kennedy sub. Kennedy carrier was still there, Portsmouth Naval Hospital, then the pier in Norfolk on a subtender, and my last summer in Newport, Rhode Island, my home state, And I loved it so much that at 40 years old, I called Washington and said, I'd like to come on active duty. And they said, there's a ship leaving for Bosnia-Herzegovina from Staten Island, New York, the USS Normandy, a guided missile cruiser. If you can be on it by Memorial Day, you're in. And off I went.
Okay, wow. Now, you served in office as in the State House from 2015. Do you want to talk a little bit about your tenure in the Rhode Island State House?
Yes. It's so funny. The Democrats have been in control of the state of Rhode Island since what they call the bloodless coup of 1939. Over 80 years they've been in control. And I got elected in 2015. There hadn't been a Republican elected from my district in over 30 years. I was the first Republican elected, even though Hillary Clinton won the district. And 2 years later, I was reelected. Again, the first Republican to be reelected in over 30 years. Again, Hillary Clinton carried the district. So I was very proud of that. And, at our heyday in most recent years, out of 75 reps, only 10 were Republicans. And in the Senate, it's even worse. Out of 39, only 5 Republican senators.
Wow.
So it's been a real stranglehold for the last 80 plus years.
Okay.
But, they say you can't get things done, as Republican. But I proved that wrong. First thing I did is I got a sex offender bill passed. I got beach fees lowered. And also, most importantly, the state was putting $1 charge on your landline if you still had one, on your cell phone, and also a 26-cent charge for geotechnology. When I asked the question, where was the money going? Was it going to fund 911 services, which was supposed to? No. All $18 million collected annually was going into the black hole known as the general fund. And I fought hard, and I didn't get all of it, but I got half the money, $9 million of it, put into a restricted receipt account. So I was very proud of my accomplishments. And you know what? It took working across the aisle. It took working with mainline Democrats, progressive Democrats, but we got those things done. I ended my time as a Navy chaplain at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, actually watching the towers. The planes hit the towers. I was in the public affairs office trying to put an ad in the base newspaper. I was the main base Protestant chapel pastor and a base chaplain for all 20,000 Marines at Camp Lejeune. Watched the planes hit the towers. The general says, pack up everything you think you're going to need, get your shots, your wills in order, we're going to war. Some of the first few service members killed were from my chapel. In fact, President and Mrs. Bush came in, took over my fellowship hall, repainted, redecorated, covered the windows to talk to some of the families of the first few service members killed. And it was my time to go over. I fell in a freak accident and blew my right shoulder apart. And I left the service in 2004. And then in 2018, I had to have a second shoulder replacement that didn't work. So then 30 days later, I had to do a third shoulder replacement, but this was a reverse. The rotator cuff was going, I had to cut off part of my shoulder, flip it, and I have a reverse shoulder now. I take off my shirt, I look like a science experiment, but that's what it is. And we just move on from there. And in 2020, I took on James Langevin, a 20-year do-nothing Democrat incumbent for Congress. And guess what? I only had $50,000. I raised 20. I put 30 of my own money in. And when the polls closed, I was leading by over 15,000 votes, 58% to 42%. Wow. And as the night went on, my lead continued to shrink, but I've been in politics. I know how it works. But at 1 a.m., I was still leading 51-49. A friend of mine who does this for a living, she's in Florida. She calls me, she says, Bob, you've won. Why isn't the AP reporting it? And exactly 7 minutes later, there was a mail-in ballot addition. And that turned my 58-42 as we opened the night into his 58-42. But ultimately, it was only 8% that we really needed to win because it was 58-42. We needed 8%. And so I immediately announced again in February 2021 that I was taking Mr. Langevin on again. And we've been running for almost 3 years now. And just a few days ago, my opponent announces he's not running for Congress.
Really? So you scared him off?
Yes, it's now an open seat. Very excited about that. So we're going for it. And we believe we're going to be successful in November.
Have the Democrats chosen someone to be the nominee for that seat yet? Or has there been a front runner on the Democratic side?
Well, they were coming out of the woodwork. But the one that's the most prominent is the general treasurer of Rhode Island, Seth Magaziner. He was running for governor, but when this happened, he has now switched races. Instead of governor, he's running for Congress. Okay. So he's probably going to be my most formidable opponent, but he helped me a little bit right off the bat because there's a picture that surfaced of him walking in a defund the police march.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I'm going to use that and beat him to death with it.
So Christmas came early, right?
Yep, it sure did.
Okay, so let me ask you. You served in the state house from 2015 till 2018.
Yes.
Why did you not run for a third term?
Well, actually, I was going to run for lieutenant governor.
Okay.
But in fact, a mayor in one of the Democrat cities called me up because I had a progressive running too in a primary against the sitting lieutenant governor. He says, Bob, if the progressive beats the sitting person, I will personally endorse you. So that's how bad it is, progressives and everything.
Right.
So, but ultimately, I stepped aside for a gentleman who actually was a millionaire. That's who the party wanted. I always say I'm the good soldier. I do what needs to be done. I stepped aside. And ultimately, with surgeries and everything else, I decided that I would run for Congress on my next run. So a lot going on.
So the gentleman that took your spot to run for the state house in 2018-ish, did he end up winning?
3 days after he announced at the convention and was endorsed, my wife and I flew to Florida for a few days. I got a text saying he dropped out of the race.
Oh, wow. Why?
So we were left with a gentleman who only had $600 in his account and ultimately got beat. But the funny part of it is Gina Raimondo, who was the governor, she's now the Commerce Secretary. Had I won for lieutenant governor, I would now be the governor of Rhode Island.
Wow. So, you got to go with your instincts, right?
Yep.
Wait, but why did that gentleman, drop out?
Because his family decided they didn't want him to do it. He was a businessman. He actually was more suited to be the gubernatorial candidate than the lieutenant governor candidate. Because here in Rhode Island, the lieutenant gubernatorial governor candidate or candidate governor does not have really any responsibilities. It's it's what you make the position. And when I was going to campaign for lieutenant governor, I was going to campaign to eliminate the lieutenant governor's position, so eliminate the job I'd get elected to, and instead take the $1 million a year that funds that office and use it to hire an inspector general to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in Rhode Island. That was my goal. And in fact, we have a litany of speakers of the houses that have been indicted or ultimately gone to prison. So it would have been a good investment.
Wow. Okay, we have a comment here from Karen Jensen. 80 years under Democrat rule is way too long. I think you would agree, right?
Yes, and one of the problems we've had in recent years is the National Republican Party has shown really very little interest in New England as a whole, but specifically Rhode Island. And Rhode Island, I think John Holmes was really our last great chairman, and he helped us get General Assembly candidates, and they got elected, but also the general officers. We had several general officers as well, but he was the last great party chair we had. So, and that's back in the late 80s. Yeah.
Okay. Another comment here from Mr. Mike Kuntz. Bob, I believe a country is borders, language, and cultures. Oh, I think he's trying to say that that a country is broken if we don't have our borders, right? What is your stance on southern border, and has the immigration in Rhode Island impacted your state like Pennsylvania and New York and other states?
Well, yes, absolutely. We need to get control of our southern border. There is no doubt about it. I mean, we've got over 2 million people cross the border in the first year of the Biden presidency. And not only that, we don't know who's coming into the country. I mean, they're just coming in. We don't know whether they're terrorists. We don't know who they are. We've had fentanyl coming across the border. We've had children, unaccompanied minors. They've been molested. They've been killed. Let's face it. We need to have control of our borders. We're losing our sovereignty. And as far as Rhode Island, we have people who should not be in this country in my state. And in fact, they're coming over the border, not just from Central America, South America, they're coming from Africa. I mean, it's completely out of control. 2 million people. We don't have the ability to take care of our own people, and we're providing resources to people that shouldn't even be here. Here in Rhode Island, we've had people being introduced to the media who are here illegally. And the governor stood right next to the people that were being introduced. I mean, I would think something needs to be done. It's unbelievable.
Okay. So, Bob, can you tell us about your platform for Congress? What do you intend to, run on?
Oh, absolutely. I think the number one thing for me is finances, fiscal management. I mean, let's be honest. When Clinton was leaving as president, and Newt Gingrich and the contract with America and the Republicans held his feet to the fire, we had welfare reform. And you know what? The year Clinton left office, we had a surplus close to $1 billion. And I said, you know what? We will have surpluses as far as that's what I said to my wife. We'll have surpluses as far as the eye can see. And what happens? I said close to $1 trillion. I'm sorry, 900. I think it was $54 billion. The very next year, George Bush got elected and took us to war. And it was just the deficit since then has just exploded. And it's out of control now. We've got a $22 trillion deficit, the federal government, plus $6 trillion that the Fed's holding, total of 28 on our way to 30. And Biden's plans, his 10-year plan, would increase that to $40 trillion. I mean, we've lost total control. And, I appreciate Rand Paul fighting hard for fiscal integrity. And he said at one point originally, he said, he had the penny plan. He said, if we just take 1 penny from every federal dollar spent, we could balance the budget in 5 years and we'd have a surplus 5 years after that of $1 trillion. Guess what? Then we had the problem with, COVID and all of this started. Well, it went to 2 pennies. Now it's 3 pennies, but we could still do it, but it's going to take fiscal restraint, and we don't have it. They just think, and I love my state in Rhode Island. It's always whatever the delegation brings home. Oh, we're getting all this money from the federal government, but where's it coming from? I mean, it's unsustainable for our children and our grandchildren.
Right.
The other thing is education. That's a big thing with me. I stood on the floor of the Rhode Island State House as a freshman legislator. I had taught an entire year in the Providence school system, our capital city school system, on every day for an entire year, everything from pre-K to JRTC. I was back in uniform in a public school. Kids call me chaplain, crosses on my sleeves. But I said, there's no teaching going on at Providence. And let me tell you, the teachers union came after me. I mean, it was just brutal. And you know what? The John Hopkins report comes out a couple of years later. And what does it say? There's been no teaching going on in Providence for 30 years. Wow. 30 years. And the state, almost 2 years ago now, took over the city of Providence's education system. But here's the problem. City of Central Falls, which is only 1 square mile, and it's heavily immigrant, but they've been under state control for 25 years. Their proficiency in math and English is 8 and 10%. Providence, which is being taken over now, their proficiency is currently only 8 and 10%. Do I expect it to change at all? No, I really don't, because we need new models and new ideas for education. So those are probably my 2 biggest ones.
Okay. Now, having run for Congress in 2020 and you're running now, you're obviously the front runner for the GOP nomination, right? Are there any other candidates that are in the race?
There's a couple that have indicated that they might run. It's like, with him announcing he's not running, I knew we were going to beat him, but it's going to be a little more bit of a challenge because now we don't have him. These people that will be running don't have records. And basically, I think on the Republican side, some people are thinking of jumping in too. So I may face a primary.
Okay. Now, has the NRCC come in and pledged any sort of help?
Well, that's so funny. It's so funny that you say that. A year ago, I took my team to Washington to meet with the NRCC. And I said, hi, I'm Bob Lancia, and I'd love your support. And they said, you know what? We don't care about you. We don't care about your campaign. In fact, we don't care about Rhode Island. Langevin always wins 65-35. And so it doesn't matter. And basically, I said, yeah, but I'm Bob Lancia. I win. And I proved that in the election in 2020. With no help, we almost took them out. And with some help, just a little bit of help, we would have won and helped take one of those 5 seats we need to flip the House.
Okay. Another comment here, question here from Mike Coons. What is your opinion of the Paris Accord and NATO paying for their fair share?
I'm not a big fan of the Paris Accord. I think President Trump had it right. I also had it right about NATO paying its fair share. He also had it right about us paying. Turn up a little bit. Turn up a little bit. He also had it right about UN, them paying their fair share. So there's several, that we need to work on, because we cannot fund the world anymore. We just can't do it.
Okay. Another question here from Diana. What methods or resolutions do you believe will most help the Providence school system?
Well, I think the first thing is, the buzzword, of course, is school choice. But beyond that, I think we need, here in Rhode Island, we were the home of manufacturing. And I talk to a lot of manufacturers. I talk to a lot of people that are running businesses. And they say, you know what, Rep Lancia, we cannot get technical help, people with technical skills. We don't need people with a 4-year college education. We need people with technical skills. So we need to produce people, give them the opportunity to not just go to college, but to go to technical schools. But also in our schools themselves, we had Rhode Island College, which I graduated from, my undergraduate in elementary ed. That originally was a teacher's college. We need, I think, to dedicate that school once again to teachers and to come up with the new methods that are out there and new ways of teaching kids, and use that school as the laboratory to help teachers and fund those teaching programs and those teachers.
Okay. Now, here in New Jersey, the perennial issue that candidates run on is that the property taxes in New Jersey are sky high, right? In fact, we have the highest property taxes in the entire country. What is the perennial issue in your state?
It was the car tax, actually. Okay. And the previous speaker said that he would reduce and eliminate the car tax. And that's very popular. So what's happening now is, of course, that under the new speaker, because the speaker got defeated in 2020, that they're continuing with that. So it will be, I think that will be good. But also in terms of property taxes, let's face it, that is the majority of the money that we use for our schools. And the new lieutenant governor in Virginia, Winsome, she made a great statement. She said, we're funding buildings rather than children. And that's exactly what's happening. 90-something% of the budget goes to salaries and buildings and infrastructure. 3% actually goes to kids. We've got to change that. And, so I like the idea of having those vouchers and giving kids the opportunity to go. We don't want kids to be stuck in a school system by zip code. We want to give kids the opportunity to pursue those things they want to, and to be able to go to the schools that will best suit their needs.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the races from last year, from 2021 in Virginia and Jersey?
I was very excited to see both. And I was so rooting for the gubernatorial candidate in New Jersey. We thought he had it. But again, as the night went on and they were counting the mail-in ballots, so same kind of situation we've seen before. But I think Virginia was a watershed, and I think it's the beginning of a red wave. I really do, and I believe Rhode Island is going to be part of that red wave. I absolutely.
How many House seats do you predict that the Republicans take this year?
Well, I'm hearing
5, right? So how many do you?
I'm hearing 50-55. So I don't know. We'll see. But how many Democrats? 20, 30 Democrats said they're not running, and now the guy that I was going to run against isn't running. So the numbers are climbing. I think we're going to have a great year.
All right. Now I have to ask you this because you're from Rhode Island. There was recent news about Tom Brady, right? How he may have retired or he may have not. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's so funny because even our governor mentioned it during our emergency, press conference he had. But I love Tom Brady. I hate, sorry when he went to the Patriots, but, he's a great player. And I'd love to see him play another year or two. I know his father said he's not retiring. He said he's going to have an announcement. But I got to say, the game tonight with Joe Burrow, beating Kansas City, I happened to go to LSU. I was part of the first and only group of candidates, veterans with disabilities. They had a boot camp to help teach entrepreneurial skills, things like that at LSU. It was a 10-day boot camp. So I have a bit of an affinity for LSU. So I'm very excited about Joe Burrow, and I believe he could be the new face of the NFL if Brady does retire.
Okay, great. Now, what has the vaccine, the COVID situation been like in your state?
Well, interestingly, we've been one of the highest vaccinated states, but still, we've had a very high rate. Now we're having still a high rate of COVID. The governor, I think he's saying that this is because we're doing the most testing as well. So a lot of vaccinations, but also a lot of continued testing. And he believes that, that may be why we have a high rate, despite the high rate of vaccinations.
Right. Now, has the governor of your state, shut down businesses?
Yes. Back the current governor, no, but the previous governor did, Governor Raimondo. And I got to tell you, you remember that summer of the BLM riots, the summer of 2020? Well, we had a same situation here in Rhode Island. It was the day that President Trump said, you need to take control of the streets. And our governor did not call in the National Guard. And downtown Providence, our capital city, over 125 businesses were destroyed. Wow. And, over 100 businesses. And my opponent at the time had said, well, I got $125 million to give to small businesses. Guess what? The governor held on to that money and never gave that money to small businesses, so it was a disaster. And yes, it made it very hard. And I was seeing today, one report said that, I forget where it was, but it might have been New York. Businesses are losing $15,000 a day because of these restrictive rules. And it seems so silly. You walk in the door with a mask on, you walk to your table, you take it off. It's off the whole time you're there. You put it back on to walk out the door. I mean, It makes no sense. No sense at all.
There's no science behind that, right?
No, none at all.
No science.
Yes, it's crazy. It really is crazy. And I think this Omicron now, it seems like everybody and their brother is getting Omicron. But if you've been vaccinated, I've heard stories, and people are saying it's no worse than a common cold. So I think we're definitely in a better place. I think our kids should be in school. I don't think they should be masked. And I think we should, be carrying on our lives as much as normal. And I love what Governor DeSantis is doing in Florida. I think he's showing the way. I think he's fantastic.
Now, in Jersey, 1/3 of all small businesses shut their doors permanently as a result of the government, shutdown of small businesses last year. So this is devastating to just the normal people, right? To the common folks.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I remember that, was it Atlas Gym there in New Jersey? Went toe to toe with the governor down there, and he's still fighting, I know. God bless him. But I don't see how many of these small businesses are going to be able to stay open. I mean, with the increased costs, even McDonald's, a major chain, is saying their costs from everything from food to bags and plastic and everything else is going up exponentially. And now the minimum wage continues to increase, right? $15, $18, $20. I think we're going to be, I'm seeing the death of many small businesses, and it's going to get to a point, I'm afraid, I hate to say this, but where only the large businesses, are going to be able to stay open. That's what I see.
Right. You mentioned the owner of Atlas Gym, Mr. Ian Smith. He actually announced a couple of days ago. Well, I don't think it's official, but I mean, he's going to run for Congress here in District, I believe, 4. And we hope to have him on our show as well. We have one more comment here from Mr. Michael Kuntz. Bob, gas is $3.25 from $1.85 under Trump. Oil is now $9.90 a barrel from $41. How do we get energy independence?
Well, you know what? President Trump had it right. And Biden has done everything he possibly can to ruin what the previous president had done. And, we need to open up our that pipeline again. We need to, allow them. I see the courts now are siding against us. And, I think we need somebody who's pro-energy. I believe there's a place also for nuclear power as well. And I think, that's important. And we need to harness all our energy. Everybody wants to talk about renewables. But I'll tell you, with renewables, it's a matter of, they're going to work air, wind and solar, but not all the time. And we have to have the gas. We need oil, and there's going to be an important part of our economy through the next few decades.
Okay. This is your website, right, Mr. Chaplain?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Chaplain Lancia, LanciaForCongress.com, because we have a question here. We had a comment here from Michael Coons. He asked, how do we contact your campaign to support you? Well, Mike, this is how you do it. LanciaForCongress.com. One last comment, and we'll let you go because I know you've got a busy schedule. All right.
Yes.
From Mr. Barry Wilkes, many people adhere to a philosophy that big government and taxes are the answer to our problems. However, no country has ever taxed itself into prosperity. Is there still hope that we can get back to a more realist path in the near future without learning the painful way?
Yes, that's a great question. And here, I love what former President Reagan once said. He said, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I'm part of a group of candidates, young guns, a lot of them are candidates of color, and they've allowed me to be part of the group. But, we're fiscal conservatives, we're small government. And if we can get this group elected this fall and band together, which we've agreed to do, we can change the face of government. We don't need rhinos. We don't need people who are there just to be there. And that's a lot of felt with my opponent. He was there 20 plus years. I talked to one congressman. He said, Bob, you know what the goal is when you get to Congress? To stay there. And you stay there, you don't do anything. But that's not my goal. My goal is to do what needs to be done, to fight for my constituents, and to change, yes, the face of government, make it leaner and meaner in terms of operating. We have to. We can't afford big government anymore. When our budget is $4 trillion and our deficit is as large as our budget, it's unsustainable. So we need fiscal restraint. We need people who care about that. And let's get government. Let's make it smaller. Let's make it leaner. Let's make it work for the people. And that's my goal.
Okay. Thank you, Chaplain Lancia, for coming on our show. For all the viewers that are watching, if you want to go to his website and check out his campaign, go to LanciaForCongress.com, LanciaForCongress.com. Bob, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We wish you the best of luck in your campaign, and we know that you'll win this time.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Chaplain Lancia, what a great guy. We wish him the best of luck in his campaign. If you want to learn more about his campaign, of course, go to LanciaForCongress.com. I want to thank all the viewers tonight for participating, for all the questions. We will be back next Sunday night. I believe it's February 6th, right? We will be back with great guests. Next Sunday, we'll be back February 6th at 8 p.m. Let me see who's on the docket for next Sunday, all right? Next Sunday, I believe we have a candidate for Congress from Illinois, Mr. James Martyr from Illinois. And we also have Mr. Mike Coons, who's been commenting tonight. He will be on our show next week as well. Mike Coons ran for state senate in District 37 here in Jersey. He's going to come on our show next week to talk about his ventures that he's doing right now in the media world. And I believe he has just started a news venture. So we're very happy and excited to talk to him about that new project. And of course, we'll talk to Mr. Martyr, who hails from the great state of Illinois, about his congressional run. So please tune in every single week. We have great new guests. We're going national now. So we're talking to guests from every single state about their particular runs, about their candidacies and what they want to do to help save not just their state, but our country as a whole. All right. If you think that you would be a great guest for our show, please email us, okay, at realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to have you on. We hope to have on Mr. Ian Smith on our show in the coming weeks. He, of course, is the owner of Atlas Gym, right? He made national news for defying Governor Murphy's, orders, and he was fined like over $1 million, right? But I believe he's paid that back, or he's found some way to settle that. And now he is running for Congress, I believe, in the Congressional District 4. So we hope to have the chance to talk to him in the coming weeks. So, here on Real Talk, we talk to the biggest names in politics, not just in Jersey, but nationwide. All right. So thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back on Wednesdays, right? On Wednesdays, we're doing our show too. So we hope to be back this coming Wednesday, but the Wednesday shows are going to be perhaps twice a month, but these Sunday shows are every single week, and we're actually booked, right? our roster for guests. We're booked until mid-March, so this show is popping. It is the fastest growing political show in New Jersey. So please like and subscribe to our Facebook page, to our YouTube channel. Just search for Real Talk with Ronnie, and you'll see my beautiful face. And all you got to do is just hit that like and subscribe and follow, and you will be on the notice for all our future shows. Okay, so guys, it is January 30th, 2022. You're now watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. And thank you for joining us tonight. Have a happy Sunday. Have a great week. And I'll see you all next Sunday, 8 p.m., same time, same place. All right, guys. Good night and bye-bye.